Hey, what's up? It's Darren. We are here in the parking lot outside the new Swing House Studios in Atwater. For 20 years, Swing House was in Hollywood. Phil, who started it, built this thing from the ground up. I've been waiting like 6 months to get in here and check it out. You and I are going to see it together for the first time right now. Come on, let's go. So here we are, waiting area of Swing House, the new Swing House Atwater Studios with Mr. Swing House himself, Phil. He just gave me the pronunciation. Jaurigui.
Yeah.
It's easier than you say.
Yeah, it's easy to say. It just looks funny.
And hard to spell.
Hard to spell, looks funny.
So I was saying on the way in here, we did a little quick intro. I've been looking forward to this since probably September. I haven't been over here yet. Basically, this building from the ground up.
Yeah, it was an open warehouse building that we built, a 21,000 square foot space that we built into 4 sound stages, 6 private producer suites, a main tracking recording studio, a showroom for strings and drum heads and things that are owned by Dario, and it's just a loading dock with a rental department, offices, a soon-to-be mezzanine.
Oh, nice.
So there's a lot to.
What's going to happen up there? Like just for hanging out?
That will be eventually. There'll be a lounge up there, a couple office spaces, and a couple more studios.
Okay.
So we've been building everything from the ground up for almost a year now, and it's been a long, arduous process.
Well,
but
I know, dude. I'm surprised you still have hair.
Oh man, they went all gray. I sprayed it today.
Let's get the grand tour.
All right. So let's
after you.
So the building's split into 2 sides. Rehearsal world, recording world.
Okay.
So here is the 4 rehearsal stages, and they vary in sizes, and they start with the smallest to the biggest, and the smallest one is 400 square feet, and the biggest one is 2,000 square feet. This is the smallest room.
From just like curiosity, from like a construction standpoint, what goes into between studios to keep everything soundproof?
So these rooms are 5 layers of drywall thick. And when we go into the recording studio, which is unfinished, you'll be able to see the actual layers in the wall. So 5 layers of drywall, and then on top of that, a 2-inch air gap in between. There's 3 layers, and there's a 2-inch air gap, and there's 2 more layers.
Okay.
And then on top of that, the cement, the base of the ground has been cut all the way down to the dirt. So it goes 4 inches down and cut. And so every room is on its own island, like a moat.
Oh, so there's no vibration transfer.
So the low end vibrations that go through cement naturally cut off when you have them in a moat.
That's so cool.
So each room was on its own little island, and like there's a band rehearsing next door right now, and you don't hear it at all.
No,
now. Yeah.
You don't hear anything.
And we have trains that go by.
Yeah.
All the time too, and you don't hear them either. The art is one of our friends who's always had art at Swing House for almost 20 years.
Yeah,
his name's Louis XXX, and he's a semi-famous artists around town. We were lucky enough to get curated these photos by Mr. Music Head Gallery, which is on Sunset and Gardner in Hollywood, and he came over, I showed him the space, he goes, oh, I'm going to bring in 13 pieces and we're going to
And this is all man, just all the way.
Yeah, so different photographers, but all curated by the same guy.
So this is the granddaddy.
This is the big daddy. This is 50 by 40, 2,000 square feet with 20-foot high ceilings. This is a full production stage. You can do anything in here. You can do it, set it up like a regular rehearsal, like this is already, or you can turn it into full stage decks.
Yep.
Set up the room either way, that way, or this way.
Now is this the showcase room?
This is the showcase. So there's a couple different rooms that could be showcase rooms, but this is the biggest. And the cool thing about this room is it's totally multifunctional. So meaning like these curtains, these black curtains, they open and close. So if you wanted to show a movie or you wanted to do a green screen or whatever you want to do, you can change the sound of the room. You can just move the curtains. They're all on track.
It's a transformer room.
Yeah, it's a transformer room, exactly.
Absolutely.
Because, no one's going to make a full-time living with bands rehearsing in a big room. You got to make it so you can do lots of things here. Imagine, I said there's 5 layers in each room. Yeah. So that's like building 5 buildings.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you do apartment. You can do 1 layer of drywall on each side. And so
it's 5 times the cost, 5 times the labor.
5 times the time.
Everything.
5 times the inspections.
Oh, you got to inspect that for each layer?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Like then the electrical goes in, so they got to inspect it. You can't close it up until they come and inspect it, so you got to wait.
How much did you learn over the last year? I mean,
I learned everything you need to know and what you don't want to know.
Yeah. And you could
and everything not to ever do again.
I was going to say, you could probably write a book on the best practices, do's and do not do's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And no matter how hard you try, somebody gets you.
Yeah.
Somebody, somehow, or some bad luck just comes along.
Oh, it's always, yeah. Especially when you're, in a new building, you don't know it. You don't know how old is this place?
This building was built in, I believe it was built in 60 something, late 60.
Okay, so it's not too bad.
But we changed the interior of it so much we had to totally change the use of it, and we had to change the structure of the ceiling and the roofing and everything. So
bring everything up to code.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you went so far.
We had to add 136 sprinklers.
Oh my God.
So this room it can be a tech room, or it can be a control room, or it can be an edit bay for a video.
Or a green room.
A green room.
Yeah.
Green room, and then even beyond that, so your band, so you can have your crew in here, or you can have your mixing console, or whatever you want in this room. Have your band here, and then the band has their own bathroom and shower. Woo! Luxurious. The goal here is that you pull up onto the loading dock, you park your bus right next to us, you plug in, and then you come in, you can rehearse, record, video, photo shoot, whatever you want to do.
That's great.
And then you have your own little area, and then you need to take a shower, and even if you need to sleep overnight in the bus, take a shower, use the toilet, and go back to the bus.
And I feel like you guys, and you kind of have to operate 24/7 in some capacity where, when you have a facility like this, to keep the interest and level and accommodate it.
Totally.
And the income.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's like a hotel.
Yeah.
It's a rock and roll hotel. So here is stage 3. A little smaller, a little bit more homey. But it's got a nice vibe. Every room has a slightly different feel and a slightly different vibe. That way we have something for everybody. So this is going to be, it's not done yet, but this is going to be the main tracking space for the recording studio.
Okay.
So this is its own separate recording studio. Meaning the band can be playing right here, tracking, drums right here. You can put vocals in that overdub booth there, put a piano or guitar or horns or whatever in there. It's a double glass window. Okay, so we'll show you the interior of how we did every wall in the studio. And so it's, like I said before, it's 5 layers of drywall. So you got layer 1 here, and then this stuff here is called mass load vinyl. It's the heaviest, thickest, but thinnest soundproofing material you can buy. It's like lead when you get your X-ray. Most deadening type of material that you can put into a wall. So you got drywall, vinyl, drywall, 2-inch stud, 2-inch air gap, 2-inch stud again, drywall, vinyl, drywall, drywall. Those pipes feed the stages and the private producer suites. So you can record a band in the big stage 1, like a live concert, to the Neve console right here.
Track it here.
Yeah, track it here. Or, say you want to do a live stream, we're going to have fiber optic wiring, which is like, the fastest speed, internet you can get. A company called Clearline is running fiber optic through the whole building. And so the fiber optic can go, you can say, hey, let's stream a live concert from stage 1. But we really want to mix it on the Neve because we want it to sound extra good. Mm-hmm. So the fiber optic line runs in here, boom, band's playing in that room, but you're mixing in here and it's streaming directly out immediately to the public.
So we're hanging out here. This is, I guess, the fishbowl, the Dario.
Yes, this is the Dario showroom at Swing House.
Yeah.
And Dario is a big part of Swing House because I am the West Coast A&R guy for the company for the past 7 years, and so if people don't know me because of Swing House, they know me because of Dario, and so it all kind of ties together because who doesn't want to get free strings or free drum heads from somebody when they go to rehearse or record at a studio in Hollywood? So
and the very question is, who doesn't know Phil? If you don't know Phil, you've probably never been through LA. And if you've never been to, this guy's probably put on more shows than most people see in a lifetime. I think that's fair to say. Do you have any ballpark of how
Probably
many?
done, yeah. I mean, definitely not as many as Golden Voice, but yeah. As far as
Pretty
LA
close.
as LA indie promoter, I would say I'm probably one of 5 who've done probably the top 5 in the last 20 years. Yeah, definitely.
And I should mention that again. Swing House, you guys just celebrated your 20-year. Congratulations.
Yep, we're actually rolling into year 21 soon, and so, but I call it the year-long celebration.
Right.
It's a year-long.
Or you could be like the Viper Room. The Viper Room turned 21 last year, and it was like, we're legal now.
It's so funny because House of Blues, Viper, and us are all almost the same exact age.
Yeah.
We're all like 20, 21 years old, and that means total. Like House of Blues is anywhere and everywhere. It's only been around 20 years.
That's funny because who's the other one that just started? Just had 20 years. Side One Dummy Records.
Side One Dummy. They started. I remember them starting. In fact, we recorded some of the first records of Side One Dummy at the original Swing House on Cahuenga.
Yeah, and I know Kevin Zinger with Suburban Noise. That's been about 20 years. So, I mean, all you guys that have surpassed a couple decades. That's impressive.
It's lucky. I would say all those companies that we just talked about, whether it be us, Swing House, or Side One Dummy, who I have oodles of respect for, and I look up to because they're my peer, but I still look up to them. And the Viper Room, which I still have so much respect for to survive all the madness of the Sunset Strip. But all those companies started at a time we got very lucky in Los Angeles. And the reason that we started at a time was right after the riots, and it was right after the earthquake. And that was a time in LA where it was just sketchy, scary, and empty. But because of that, everything was cheap. You can get places really cheap. You could start things really cheap. I remember my first Swing House studio was a 1,500 square foot building on Cahuenga, which is now the most hipster neighborhood in the world.
Right.
But the only thing that used to be there was Swing House and a needle exchange. And when I say needle exchange, people don't even know what that is.
Well,
needle exchange is where you go if you're a junkie and you go exchange your needles for clean ones. So you
Here's my HIV one.
Yeah, so you don't get HIV
one.
or hepatitis or something like that. So that was the only thing on the block. It was us and the needle exchange. Now there's the Hotel Cafe. There's Velvet Margarita. There's like 10 other hipster, restaurants. The piano bars right there. St. Felix, which is a great hangout right there, is right there. And
District 33, great burgers.
Totally, all that stuff is there now. And we were the only ones. We were the originals. And I used to have to fight people off with a baseball bat from trying to steal my boombox out of my office or stealing a guitar out of our office, or we used to have a little TV, like one of the little TV with bunny ears. And, totally. And that's I used to have to sit there and guard it with a baseball bat. I'd have to be guarding the rehearsal room and guarding the office, and that's how it was when we first started on Cahuenga in the early '90s. But because everything was so desolate and desperate and cheap, we were all able to get in really, really cheap and early. And so when things got nicer, which took about 7 to 10 years, we were already on the upswing.
Right.
And we were also the ones who were at the last bits of selling records. So in the late 90s, my clients were the Goo Goo Dolls, the Wallflowers, Green Day, Weezer, the Chili Peppers, who else? Sarah McLachlan, Amy Mann. These are all artists that they're sort of household names.
And they sell a lot of records.
But at that time, they were selling, if you didn't sell a million records, it was an excess. Yeah, so you were selling 2, 3, 4 million. So, and in cases like Green Day, you were selling 10, 11, 12 million. Alanis Morissette, Chili Peppers selling 5, 7 million. I think Sugar Ray was one of my first bands, and they sold 2 or 3 million.
Yeah.
So everybody was selling records at that time, so it was able to help launch their careers. Launching helped our career launch and get a name for ourselves. And even though we didn't sell millions of records, we were there with the bands, rehearsing, writing, recording those records, and we were around it. And so the name our name followed along with those names.
And the one thing that's happened in the LA music scene, and I'm sure always, but maybe more so in the last 20 years, is the unity of it all. The fact that even over the last 7, 8 years, Nick Adler's done a good job of uniting that Sunset Strip. The Roxy, Viper, Whiskey, everybody's cool.
The Trinity.
Everybody kind of works together. And I think that transfers to the music, to the bands.
I agree.
And it shows in the amount of talent and success that comes out of here. And that that's not always the case, because bands have always come to LA, always come to New York, and but I think more so in probably the last 7, 8, 10 years, it's really
we've had a better run of bands. But the cool thing about it is we've had totally diverse bands.
Yeah.
Where in the 80s it was metal, or glam, or metal, or or hard rock, whatever you want to call it. And in the 90s there was some grunge that came out of here. And then in the 2000s was like,
that was like Korn and Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, Limp Bizkit was kind of like
Eminem was big.
It was kind of like the
rap rock,
the bro rock.
Yeah, exactly.
And that quickly went away, and not a lot of the bands survived from that. But what we've had in the past 10 years since, or maybe 15 years since, is there's not been one scene, but there's been multiple bands, like we just talked about, AWOL Nation, the Mowgli's. AWOL Nation sounds nothing like the Mowgli's, but they're both doing really, really well.
Right.
Dead Sarah sounds nothing like those two other bands, but they're all doing really, really well.
Exactly.
They've all kind of come up in the past 5 years. We can even say Oregon and bands like that, totally diverse bands who are making it out of the Los Angeles area and came off the Sunset Strip or off the East Side or the Silver Lake side. I really like the fact that there's no set in stone style of music anymore. Because in the 80s you were stuck in a certain style that was LA. They considered that, and it was almost pigeonholed in it, and in the end it got so popular that it hurt themselves. But now it's just like there's always 2, 3, 4 bands that are coming up and getting successful each year, and they're totally diverse, but they all sound LA to me.
Well, and that's interesting, and that's something that almost always comes up on this show, and I think it probably always comes up in most conversations about music, and especially when you start talking about mainstream and radio, is alternative radio is kind of the leader that kind of pushes music forward, and then the successful stuff might go to Hot AC, it might go to pop, top 40, whereas...
Like a Fits in the Tantrums.
Exactly, and a Mowgli's, and an AWOL, and an Imagine Dragons. The list goes on. I mean, a successful alternative band is bound to end up in another format. 5, 6 years ago, that was not the case.
No.
And now you mentioned those bands that are all household names, but all sound very different, can all end up on one of any 5 different formats at any given time, which is very cool.
It's good. It's a little bit more free form, and there's not such a set in stone way of what is popular music anymore.
Right. You can't listen to something and say, oh, this is going to be a hit. You could say, this is a great song, and I'm sure it will attract fans, but you can't say this is going to skyrocket to the top.
I agree.
Because I think that there's so many, we talk about the perfect storm happening in radio with an AWOL, or you look at some of the bands that have blown up, Imagine Dragons again, and Phoenix, and Mumford & Sons, and there's always these things that happen in conjunction with radio.
Exactly. $1 million.
Right. But live shows.
Maybe not with AWOL, but with everybody else, yeah.
Yeah, but live show, getting the syncs, getting the TV.
Getting an HBO sync or a commercial on HBO is always a big one. An Apple sync is always a big one. Playing the festivals, whether it be Coachella or Bonnaroo or the San Francisco one. San Francisco one.
Golden Gate Park. Outside Lands.
So getting on those ones is always a key.
And if you can, hitch your wagon to a band supporting tour, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, while we're on this topic, you've probably forgotten more bands than most people know. So in your overall experience, and not to have a kind of too arching of a question, but if you were to pick 3 or 4 characteristics that a band, an artist needs for at least a shot at success, because we all know luck comes in a little bit, timing. But do you have kind of those things where if you're looking at a band and you want to work with them?
The number one thing that I've seen out of success in the 20 years that I've been doing this is that if the band will tour relentlessly and they will live it on the road, and the only ones who have had seen any kind of success, whether it be the Mowgli's or Sugar Ray or Green Day or the Goo Goo Dolls, or who else we can go into other areas,
Anybody? I mean, Insane Clown Posse. I mean, any band that just does a lot of shows.
You have to play.
Because you build that community.
And you don't have to have a record deal. You don't have to have a hit song. But if you tour nonstop, and when I say nonstop, you got to do 100 shows a year, you know? And you got to keep going on the road, and you keep doing it over and over again. You're playing 5 people, then you're playing 50 people, then you're playing 500 people. And you have to do the same crappy town, Tucson, Austin, New Mexico, San Francisco, San Diego, Santa Barbara, and you just got to keep going up and down, Seattle, Portland, and then just keep going and going and going. And you have to do it in a van, and then you have to get into a Winnebago, and then you got to get into
taking a flight,
or maybe taking a tour bus, But you have to start. And if it means you just go in your minivan, your mom's minivan, that's how you start, and you have to do it.
Yeah.
And the only bands who I've seen have any kind of success, especially in the past 5 years, are bands who tour nonstop. So if you think that anybody's going to have success here, and anybody's going to take a quicker route to it, there is no quicker route anymore. Like you said, there's no way of saying there's going to be a hit song. There's no way of quantifying a hit song anymore.
Right.
Unless you have $1 million to spend on it.
Yeah.
And so no one does that anymore. No one in the record industry will spend $1 million on a song. So the only way you will do it is by touring nonstop.
But doesn't coming along with the tour, you don't want to spin your wheels because you have to develop your live show.
Of course.
You have to develop your charisma and your dynamics with the audience and draw people in so that those 4 or 5 people that might be at the show
they tell their next friends.
Well, that hopefully bring 8 people next time.
And that's just it, and it's such a slow process, but it's the only proven process where even if you don't have a hit song, and even if you're not on the radio, or even if you're not on TV, or you don't have a sync, that the only way that they will prove that you can make a living, meaning getting paid $5,000 to $50,000 to $250,000 a show as you build your career, is by touring.
Yeah.
And we all know it. Well, you can go back to the Grateful Dead, or you can go to Dave Matthews now, or you can go to
tours every year.
Or you can go to who else? Who is a touring entity that just doesn't stop?
Like Jackson Brown,
James
Taylor,
or metal bands like take any metal band that does well. Take Korn, for instance. They're not on the radio.
Yeah.
They tour nonstop.
Yeah.
And they tour and they do really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's how they make a living.
And you got to find your audience. I was just listening to, I'm not going to remember the name of the band, but they were saying that it was actually a hardcore band, and they were saying that there's a lot of these metal bands, even these death metal, hardcore thrasher bands, that they'll just have one little niche, like in Romania, and they can do a 3-month tour residency and they'll pay their
bills for the year.
For the year, Yep. So it is about finding your audience, and the other part of this question too is you. I would. When you started Swing House, did you have an email address?
Nope.
So you literally started. It was kind of that precipice of the rotary dial. Yeah.
Hey man, it's Phil.
Probably not even a cell phone.
No cell phones. No cell phones.
Okay.
No internet. It was sending out mailers and calling on the phone. And I remember going back 20 years ago exactly, and calling, having a list on my notebook, and I'd call the bands, and I would call these bands. They probably hated me. Because I was that dude who was like, hey, it's Phil again, so you want to come and rehearse at my studio? And they'd be like, yeah, we're going to come some point. And, and I'd be like, okay, cool, when?
What were you charging back then?
I think like some rooms were $8 an hour, and then I think other rooms were like $12 an hour. I think the highest I was charging was like $36 for a 3-hour rehearsal. And so it was like $12 an hour, I think, was the highest I had at the beginning. But
was that a good rate? That was a good rate for LA.
It was totally cheap, still. And
actually, while we're there, I want to jump back before 20 years and get a little bit of your. Where were you born and raised?
Born in the Bay Area in San Francisco.
Bay Area. Yeah. Are you? And in terms of music,
I played guitar my whole life, and I was in bands in high school, and then I was in bands after high school, and I had a band that was semi-cool and popular in San Francisco Bay Area scene, and so we started traveling to LA every other weekend, playing shows in LA, and then finally got to the point I was like, what am I doing in San Francisco? Maybe I need to live in LA. And so I said, okay, so our whole band moved to LA. And then this was when I was 21 years old. So this is like 25 years ago. And so we all moved here as a band with a couple of our girlfriends. And I would say within 3 months, The band was gone. Girlfriend was gone. It was just me. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, and then that's when you started to get more into the...
So I started getting into the scene and started really trying to meet people. And what I was doing was I was interning at my friend's studio. He had a little one-room studio. It was called Dominion Sound on the corner of Santa Monica and Vine. This is pre-earthquake and pre-riots.
Okay, yeah.
So he had this joint that was like a one-room studio, one-room rehearsal, one-room recording, 16-track tape.
Okay.
So he said, hey, you intern, you work for free, you clean up, you get the bands in and out, you turn the PA on, and I'll let you record and rehearse for free. I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I started teaching myself and learning it. And not only was I teaching myself the equipment, but I was meeting all the bands. And at the time, he was a fairly well-known guy. His name was Dean Chamberlain, and he used to be the guitar player of the Motels.
Okay.
Only the Lonely Can Play.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was a guitar player in that band. And then he had another band called, I'm forgetting the name of it now. Oh, Code Blue.
Okay.
And they're a really cool, like, new wave band in the 80s in LA. So he was a well-respected guy, little studio. And so he had cool bands coming. He had Joe Sibbs' band from Wax.
Wax, yeah.
Wax, they would rehearse there. Jane's Addiction would rehearse there.
Okay.
The London
sure
Choir Boys, all these Broken Homes, who is the guitar player of Lenny Kravitz now, and all kinds of random guys who went on to do different things and bigger things. Spike Jonze, they made that video, the first video for Wax when Loomis was running on fire down the street. That was the first Spike Jonze
Oh, really?
video ever.
Okay.
Yeah. They made it right over there by there, and so we had some, random bands that were doing things famous and up and coming. And so I got to start knowing them and becoming friends with them all. So then the earthquake hit. Mm-hmm. And the Northridge earthquake hit. And what happens in LA is that when an earthquake hits, they assess all the damage of the buildings. And your building gets either green, red, or yellow. And yellow means your building is damaged, needs to be fixed, and you cannot stay in it for any more than 8 hours at a time. In case it collapses, I guess when you're asleep or something. So my boss said, hey, I'm going to break my lease because we're yellow tagged, and to run a studio, you got to be here like 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
We're only allowed to be in here 8 hours a day. I can't run my business. I was like, damn. I'm like, I just started liking this job and meeting all the bands and getting into the scene and learning how to record and do sound. And so I said, what are you going to do with your equipment? He's like, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to get out of the business. And I was like, I'll buy it. He's like, you don't have any money? And I go, yeah, I don't have any money. And then I thought about it like for a couple nights, and I was literally like on unemployment, living with my girlfriend, and working as an intern for him. And I had 2 credit cards that I got when I moved out on my own, and it was a Visa and a MasterCard. And I looked at them like cash advance, and I was like $5,000, and the other one was $5,000. I go, I'm going to cash advance these 2 credit cards for $10,000 and buy this dude's recording gear and his PA.
Yeah.
So I went to him the next day. I was like, how much will you sell the recording studio for? He's like, $5,000. And I said, how much for the PA stuff? And he's like, $5,000. I go, here you go. I'm going to buy this from you. He's like, well, where are you going to put it? What are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm buying it from you. He's like, well, good luck. And, and he was almost like laughing at me. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready.
That's great.
And so I found an old beat up building on Cahuenga, like we said, just across from the Hotel Cafe next to the Needle Exchange. And a little old lady who owned it, I said to her, hey, I'll fix up your building. I'll put air conditioning and electrical and make it nice if you rent it to me for, I think I said it to her, I said, will you give me 6 months free?
That's great, yeah.
So she said, yeah. And I was like, I got 6 months to figure out how to do this shit.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And
that's industrious, man. Yeah.
And I had no idea. No college, no business plan.
Yeah.
Other than just like, I know some bands.
And then how long kind of incubating there before you ended up?
So that was like a 6-year run at that one space. And we slowly kept trying to like encroach on our neighbors and take over more space. And it was 1,500 square feet. And by the time I was done, it was about 3,500 square feet. And then we moved to 7,000 square feet on Willoughby, which used to be Tim Burton's movie studio.
Okay.
Where he did Ed Wood and he did Sleepy Hollow and he did a couple other cool movies in there.
Was it a Beetlejuice?
It was after Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay.
But it was like that middle period, Ed Wood and Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
Before Planet of the Apes.
Okay, yeah.
So it was a really good period for him.
Yeah.
Ed Wood is one of my favorite Tim Burton movies ever, and you can see scenes of Swing House in it, pre-Swing House. But, so he moved out of this space, and I literally was there when I saw the sign go up, the for lease sign go up. And I literally screeched in the car, jumped out, like ran up to the realtor guy. I'm taking this space. What is it? How much is it? Blah, blah, blah. And I ended up getting that space we were there for like 13 years.
Yeah.
And then we really, really built the company. And we went through 9/11 there. 9/11 was another disaster. People forget that 9/11 not only affected the world, but it dramatically affected the music industry. And why it did is because bands used to tour constantly, freely from country to country, without any checks and without any going through your baggage and spending $10,000 on shipping equipment because everything has to be checked and opened and you know, they changed all the laws of what you can move across, you know, borders and not only that, just trying to fly in the United States.
Right.
Think about how many drug addict bands couldn't go on the road anymore. I mean, this is like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, how am I going to hide my
How are you going to hide your drugs now, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, so there was this, you know, so there was so many things that we were building the new swing house when 9/11 hit. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, we're going to go out of business because bands aren't going to tour for the next year. And then literally tours stopped dead in their tracks. Wherever you were stopped.
Yeah, no, that's true. I remember because nobody was flying. I mean, that was affected everybody.
Couldn't fly.
Yeah,
And
business stopped.
So you think about it is that my whole industry is based on touring and going from one place to another. And if no one could do it, we're petrified.
Yeah.
And so that happened to us, and it took a long time for us to dig our way out of that.
But you've weathered like the internet bust, which was what, 2000, 2001?
Yeah.
9/11. We had then the most
Bizkit.
recent.
Limp Bizkit, Backstreet
You survived
Boys.
Limp Bizkit.
How do you do that? You know,
well, but also the most recent recession too that you've survived, where especially the artist community was guarding their pockets. I mean, they're like, you know, we need a little bit of cash to survive.
Absolutely.
And you know,
we watched the bubble of the internet, and remember MP3.com?
Yes. Oh yeah.
When
of
it was
course.
like, it was worth like $150 a share, and everybody's like, we're rich, and then all of a sudden, like 6 days later, it's like, oh, you know what? MP3 columns don't mean anything anymore because I can give you my song right here, and you know, on a zip drive, and there it is, and it's over with. And you're like, well, that's the end of that. So
well, because going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about, you know, when you started not having an email address, obviously not a cell phone. Have you found is there anything that's like been a detriment to you? Because it's like, well, you know, now guys can produce records at home with Pro Tools, etc.
Yeah.
They don't need, you know, these beautiful rooms.
they don't need big rooms anymore.
Yeah, but yet there's always the market that does.
Yeah, what it is that it's a two-sided sword with recording, home recording in Pro Tools and GarageBand and all the different variations of Nuendo and Logic and all the different things they have. Because yes, every Joe Blow in his house and every dad and every kid and every dude who picks up a guitar thinks they can make an album now. But what the bottom line is that you got to be good, and you got to be, first of all, you got to be able to be a good musician and have a good song. And then number two, you got to be able to record good. And just because you have the tools at your hands and on your computer, it doesn't mean you can do it good. So what happens?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd say that 70% of the stuff that's recorded at home, they bring it to us and ask us to fix it. And 90% of the time we say we can't fix it.
Because it was recorded
It'll
badly.
be faster for us to re-record it right now.
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot. And then the guys who are good, or the girls who are good, or any you know, musicians or artists who are doing stuff at home, the ones who are good, they can come here and they'll do certain things here. They'll do drums here only, or they'll do orchestra here only.
Yes.
And then they'll go home and they'll go, okay, I'm going to do my guitar and vocals and my keyboards. And then they'll come back here and say, oh, well, now we want you to mix it. So you can utilize your home studio very well if you know what you're doing and you're experienced at it. You can save money and you can do great stuff, but I'd say 90% of the time or 70% of the time at the max is that it's not, they're not good at it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think too that there's like that. I mean, people think they are. People want to do. They want to do it on the cheap.
Oh yeah, they want to do it on the cheap, and they always come back. Well, we didn't have any money, so can you come back? Can you help us fix it? Oh, what are you gonna do?
So
Let's redo it then.
I'm a numbers guy. So let's say I have a band. I have a 3-piece. I'm like, Phil, I need some time. Do you have a laundry, like an a la carte list of?
Yeah, I try to be very realistic with bands. What's your budget? That's the first thing. You know, is it $500? Yeah. Or is it $5,000? Or is it $50,000?
Because they all know that they're going to need to spend money.
They all know. They all have an idea in their brain. Just like when you go buy a car, you have an idea in your brain what you want to spend.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always very honest. I'm like, what do you got?
Yeah.
Don't tell me too much. Don't tell me too little. Tell me what you want to spend. And if it's $500, like, okay, cool. This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
You're gonna come in. You're gonna rehearse for a few hours. We're gonna turn on the tape machine on the Pro Tools in the live rehearsal room, and we're gonna say, "Get ready, go."
Yeah.
And it'll come out decent. It'll come out like a really good rehearsal live recording, and that's what you'll get. If you want to spend a couple $1,000s, we'll say, "Okay, you know what? Let's spend 2 or 3 days, and let's get the band sounding good. Spend a night or two rehearsing to listen to it ahead of time. Make sure." Even what we do is I offer to record the rehearsal for free, so they can hear what they sound like. A lot of bands don't know what they sound like.
Yeah.
They hear it in their head, but then when they hear it in the speakers, they go, "Oh."
Oh, right. Yeah, everybody thinks they sound different in their head. I want to grab this card because I want to read this off because it's still pretty impressive. 2 production stages, 2 rehearsal rooms, 7 private writer studios, private offices, full rental department, audio, backline, staging, 30 car parking spots, and 21,000 full square feet. This is an amazing spot. Swing House Studios here in Atwater. Phil, last thing I want to talk about today is something we briefly touched on when I walked in the door. I said, "Oh, you survived South by again." And that was one of the first times I think you and I ever met.
Yeah, it was because you were doing your on-the-fly interviews in our bus.
Yeah, and actually I had Brian Klein on, who manages Fitz.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the first time I ever met
there,
Fitz.
right?
Yes, great memory.
Yeah.
And there's 3 bands. It's your typical South by interview. There's 3 bands rehearsing, and I'm screaming at Fitz and trying to get the audio. But you were there, and we've talked about this a few times. You were there very, very early on, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and it's just exploded. I mean, there's kind of that tipping point where it went from a source.
Yes.
It went from a collection, a destination for music discovery to almost a whorehouse of brands and marketing. You got iTunes does their own festival there now.
It's tipped beyond.
It's beyond that.
It's tipped over and broken. It is as bad as I ever imagined it. When I went to it the first time, I went as a roadie for my friend's band like 23 years ago, and it literally was 2 blocks, and you knew every band that was playing, and if you didn't know them, you went over to them and said, "Hey man, great set, that's awesome, let's be pals," and then you stayed at someone's house, and in Austin, everybody plays music. The original Austinites, they all play music. And so literally you'd stay at someone's house, they'd feed you dinner, and you'd be like, after dinner, they'd be like, "Okay, get out the guitar, get out the banjo, get out the washboard," and the whole family played. You're
That's
like,
awesome.
Holy crap. I'm like, this is the best city in the world, this is amazing. Not only do you get to discover cool bands from everywhere else, but you get this great hospitality. I loved it. And I went every year, probably for 17 some odd years in a row. Just either as a fan or as a industry person, and a couple times in a band to play there.
And it's working too.
And then as working,
you put on your shows,
of course, and then as a band member, and then eventually turned into a industry person who ended up started curating and sponsoring our own shows there.
Doing great shows with the Roxy.
I did like 11 years in a row. I think we did shows, and I had everybody from Swerve Driver to Echo and the Bunnymen, to Fitz and the Tantrums, to Neon Trees, to AWOL Nation, to Grace Potter and the Nocturnals, Dead Sarah. I mean, we've had everybody who's did Imagine Dragons.
Yeah,
Imagine Dragons played one of the first shows for us like 7 years ago, and I thought they were terrible. Terrible.
Yeah.
I was like, this band's terrible. Who are these guys? And they were really nice. And I remember, and I go, God, this is so blah. And then come to meet them like 4 years later.
They really turned around.
Totally turned it around.
Well, Asia from Nico Vega, who's married to Dan in the band, same thing. She was telling me about that band years before. I'm like, they're all right. And then they
turned around.
I don't know what they just.
Well, what they did is they were from Vegas, and they went into Vegas and they said, we're going to learn how to be an act. And they did a residency in one of those casinos, and they took all their Vegas aura about them and said, we need to put on a show. We got to be a fucking show band, know. And
they're charismatic.
The singer became a front man. The band got really good. They got a great drummer, and a great drummer makes your band so much better. And they turned it on, and they were
able to hitch their wagon, I think, in some capacity to the Killers.
Yeah, because they have the same manager.
Dan's brother Mac manages
same manager.
And again, that's the kind of thing. It's like use your connections.
So, well, even like 6 or 7 years ago when they played for us, when I didn't think they were good, Mac was their manager.
Yeah.
And everybody was telling me, oh, it's Killer's manager, and I was like, So what? They're still not good.
Well, it's Dan's brother before he was Killer's manager.
People didn't think that even when you had that connection 7 years ago, no one was going to care unless they were good.
Yeah.
And so when they finally did get good, then they were ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it. It's like, and that's one thing I wanted to say last before we end this up about South by is that I have found that the trajectory of a band now, before when I first started this, like 2 or 3 years, your band hits. If it hits, you're going to be awesome, and if it doesn't hit, you're done. Mm-hmm. But now the trajectory of a band is 6, 7, 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's how long it takes for you to succeed now. And so it's a longer ramp up, slower ramp up, and you have to be prepared to pack it in that long. Mm-hmm. And a lot of bands, when I first knew them in the 90s and stuff, they're like, oh, well, we tried it for a couple of years, it's done.
Yeah, or we just do a few projects, so they become session guys.
Yeah, they move on to other things. You're exactly right. They become session guys or paid players on sidemen on stage and stuff. But nowadays, you got to be a band 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And then you get talent. It's the talent. It's building the audience. It's doing the show. And then, like you said, the luck.
And do you think South by has just become so big, so much, that it's over?
It has nothing to do with music anymore. There was a McDonald's stage and a Taco Bell stage this year. And I was fucking horrified. It made me sick. It made me so sick. And I've dealt with South by Southwest, the inner workings of them for years. And I know they're not the most...
They're just unabashed about it.
They're just unabashed about it. And they're never the most friendly about, or they've never been the most like coy about how they make their money.
Yeah.
But it was so unexcusably, blatantly disgusting this year. And not only that, but the crowd was half the people were there this year.
You mean industry or fans or everybody?
Everything.
Yeah, just overwhelmed.
It was because last year on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, you couldn't walk down 6th Street without you couldn't move 6 inches without bumping into people. This year, brisk, empty. Stubbs, which is you don't normally line around the block to see whoever, they were selling tickets for $20.
Oh, you're kidding.
It was empty. And the reason it's empty is because they have abused and
shattered their relationships. And, I'm sorry, their reputation. And relationships, like you're talking about with yourself.
Exactly. And I'm just like, you know what? I think they've hit the tipping point, and the tipping point tipped so bad. It's like the real estate bubble here. You know, when the bubble burst, everybody was screwed and everybody was gone.
And everybody's over it. Like, so what do you think's... 2 questions. One's, what's the future of South by, if there is one? It'll just continue to kind of beat itself into the ground, and will there be something else that takes its place?
They're going to either have to start licking their wounds and being more selective, and also nicer to their audience and to their customers. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe the movie and the tech will take over, and the music element will just kind of disappear.
Right. Because more and more bands are playing during interactive and film.
And I noticed the film part was probably more exciting than anything else, and I think the band element is over.
Who would have ever thought that someday tech would have pumped out music in terms of viewing and excitement and buzz?
Well, whoever would have thought that McDonald's would feel compelled to probably pay millions of dollars to have a stage there and not pay the bands.
Who poured out and played that stage?
I heard a few bands did, and I heard a few bands did only because after they complained that they weren't getting paid, McDonald's finally relented and gave them some money. But nevertheless, man, they probably paid McDonald's. There's no way that McDonald's didn't show up there without a $2 million check, right?
Yeah.
To South by Southwest. Obviously, none of the bands got it, but South by Southwest got it.
Oh, of course, they're print money.
And it's just that's just that's the end. You can't have. It's one thing if you sell out a little bit, you go, hey, it's okay. It's okay. You know, Red Bull, Monster Energy drink, Miller Lite,
the faders, the filters, all that stuff.
Volcom, whatever.
Brand, Levi's, Vans.
I got no problem with that. Converse, I got no problem with that. And I'll tell you why. Because even if Red Bull...
They're lifestyle brands.
Exactly. And even if Red Bull sells you something that's so dangerous for your body or so bad for your body, what they do in return is that they curate and spend money on artists. Mm-hmm. They spend money on surfers and on BMX guys and skateboarders and bicycle guys and musicians and painters and street artists. They spend money on them. They will pay for them to make a record. They will pay for them to make a video. They will pay for them for tour support. Mm-hmm. So they can actually do their art. At least they're doing that.
Yes.
So I can respect that. I'll respect that. If you want to help a brand, I don't care. If you want to take your evil money and help art, I'm down.
That's great. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
down. You know?
But if you're just doing it to get some exposure and
Yeah.
seem legit.
But if you're McDonald's and you're the number one cause of obesity in America, and you
Yeah.
think you can just roll into South by Southwest of the stage and not give bands anything for it except for some free fucking hash browns, fuck you.
Dude,
you know?
that's terrible. So what do you think's the next thing that, I mean, is there a spot, like you were saying, relentless touring, but is CMJ the next spot?
No, I think it's gonna be somewhere totally new.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be somewhere new.
Could it be something in LA? Something that
LA would be nice to have something
Yeah.
start here again. They used to have the I forgot what it was called. It was called they had a really big like music industry event here, and it was called, God, what was it called? It was in the 90s, and it was really well, and it was really big. And I think if we started one in LA, I'd be really, really excited about that. And it would bring the industry back here.
I think so, and so much of it's already here.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been around the world. All sorts of cities. What do you feel like are the best music cities in the U.S.?
Nashville and LA.
Even over Austin or
Yeah.
New York?
Nashville and LA are the two best music cities. Great jazz you'll find in New Orleans and New York.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find working musicians in New Orleans, New York, Chicago. But the
Austin, yeah.
but the best new music I think you will find in Nashville and in LA.
Yeah. And right here at Swing House, too.
Atwater
Yeah.
Village.
Yeah. Phil, so much fun, man. Check it out with the website where everybody can find out.
Swinghouse.com. It's easy.
Swinghouse.
And on the Twitter and the Instagram, easy hashtag or at Swinghouse.
Thanks again. It's Darren Rose at musicnetwork.com.